Today we're recapping all the events of Dark Seasons 1. There's a lot to cover, so feel free to use the chapter markers in the description to jump around to key moments in the series. With that, let's get into it. On June 21st, 2019, in the small German town of Winden, a man named Mikkel Kahnwald takes his own life. He leaves behind a letter in an envelope marked "Do not open before November 4th, 10:13 p.m. He is mourned by his son Jonas, his wife Hannah, and his mother Ines, who is now in possession of the letter. November 4th arrives. The town of Winden, normally a safe and quiet place, is on edge after the disappearance of a boy named Erik Obendorf. This is the first incident of its kind in Winden, at least since 33 years earlier, when Mads Nielsen disappeared. Less than 5 months have passed since his father's suicide, but a traumatized Jonas returns to school. Thankfully, his best friend Bartosz is the only one who knows Jonas has been in therapy the last 2 months. In fact, Bartosz concocted a cover story, telling everyone Jonas has been in a 2-month exchange program in France. Jonas's return to normalcy is made more difficult by finding that Bartosz and Marta began a relationship in his absence. It would seem Marta has moved on from what happened between her and Jonas last summer. During the school day, Bartosz hatches a scheme. Apparently, the missing boy Erik Obendorf was a drug dealer, and Bartosz knows where he kept his stash. So later tonight, Bartosz, Jonas, and Marta will head to the Winden cave and find Erik's stash. They recruit their friend Magnus to help. Jonas and Marta are the first to arrive at their meeting spot. Marta begins telling Jonas about her and Bartosz, but he tells her it's okay. She doesn't need to explain. Then Marta comments that she feels a strange sense of deja vu, and Jonas jokes that it's a glitch in the Matrix. As the children embark on their journey to Winden Cave, the parents of the town attend a meeting to discuss Erik's disappearance. The meeting is interrupted when Police Chief Charlotte's father-in-law, Helge, arrives, yelling, "It's going to happen again," over and over. Back in the woods, Magnus arrives with his younger brother Mikkel, followed by Bartosz. Mikkel greets Jonas with one of his patented ultimate fist bumps. When they arrive at the cave, they learn Erik's drugs have already been found by Franziska Doppler, the police chief's daughter. After she and Magnus flirted earlier in the day, she overheard their plans and decided to get there first. While fighting over the drugs, a loud noise emits from the cave, sending everyone running. Jonas is behind the others with Mikkel when he suddenly trips. After regaining his balance and collecting himself, he finds that Mikkel is gone. Alone in the woods, Jonas hears someone call his name. He turns and sees a ghostly vision of his father, covered in blood or some other dark substance. Jonas runs to catch up with his friends waiting on the street. Mikkel's father, Ulrich, and the other parents of the town rush from their assembly to find their children waiting outside the woods. After losing his brother Mads 33 years earlier, Ulrich refuses to lose a son too. He begins a relentless pursuit to find Mikkel, starting with a search of Winden Cave. During all this, the clock has struck 10:13 p.m., meaning it's time for Ines to open the envelope containing her son's final words. She reads and learns the truth about Mikkel Kahnwald, a truth that Jonas does not yet know about his father, but will soon. That night, Ulrich, who is a police officer himself, and others from the force are unable to locate Mikkel. However, the next morning, in a search led by Police Chief Charlotte Doppler, a young boy's body is found. Ulrich quickly determines it is not his son Mikkel, but strangely, the boy is dressed as though he stepped out of the 80s. As the search party continues, a stranger watches from a distance. While the town of Winden reels from the news of Mikkel's disappearance and the discovery of a body, the other missing boy, Erik Obendorf, is alive. He is held captive in a strange, windowless room containing a device that looks eerily similar to an electric chair. Erik is strapped into the chair and metal clasps are placed in front of his eyes before the machine is activated. Rattled by Mikkel's disappearance and the vision of his father, Jonas visits the room where Mikkel hanged himself. Laying down, staring at the ceiling that held the noose, Jonas notices a loose wooden board. Opening it, he finds a map of the intricate cave network beneath Winden. The words, "Where is the crossing?" are written across it. That evening, Jonas asks his mother Hannah if she misses Mikkel, and distantly she replies that she misses a notion of him. She doesn't believe he ever revealed his true self. Jonas is unaware that his mother has been sleeping with Ulrich, who is husband to Katerina, Jonas's school principal. The next morning, Jonas rebukes his mother's suggestion that he skip school so they can spend quality time together. Instead, he heads to the Winden cave with his father's map in hand. Meanwhile, Ulrich Nielsen relentlessly searches for his son Mikkel. In the caves, he finds a metal door leading to the town's nuclear plant, welded shut. He begs the plant's director, Aleksander Tiedemann, to let him search for his son on plant grounds, but ultimately is forced to pursue a search warrant. This takes time, which is difficult for the impatient Ulrich. Ulrich's other children, Marta and Magnus, isolate themselves from friends and family, as they struggle in their own ways to deal with the missing sibling. Ulrich finds comfort with his wife Katerina, but also suspicion, as she begins to see he's hiding something from her. She does not yet know that Ulrich is carrying on an affair with Jonas's mother, Hannah. The police chief, Charlotte Doppler, calmly carries out the investigation into Erik and Mikkel's disappearances and the body found in the woods. As the body is examined, they find that the boy's eyes are completely burned and his ear canals destroyed. Besides Charlotte, Ulrich, and the Winden police force, it seems there is another carrying on his own investigation. The stranger who earlier watched the search party from afar takes residence in Winden's hotel. The hotel owner, Regina Tiedemann, is suspicious of the man and the strange way he is dressed, but desperate for business allows him to stay. In his room, the stranger pins to the wall images of labyrinths, strange drawings, and a newspaper article about Mikkel. The headline on the article reads, "Where's Mikkel?" The man crosses out the word where and in its place writes when. 33 years earlier, Mikkel emerges from the cave and finds himself in 1986 Winden. Somehow, on the night of November 4th, 2019, Mikkel traveled through time to the year his uncle, Ulrich's brother Mads, disappeared. A confused Mikkel pays a visit to his family home, only to find his distraught grandmother, Jana. She assumes this strange boy must have answers about her missing son, Mads, but Mikkel, of course, has nothing for her. Unsure where else to go, Mikkel heads to school seeking Katerina, his mother, the principal. He finds her, but she is currently a student with no interest in a confused child. Finally, Mikkel ends up at the hospital, where he is taken care of by a kind, hard-working nurse named Ines Kahnwald. At the same time, Egon Tiedemann, currently failing to locate Ulrich's missing brother Mads, is called to investigate a strange case of 33 sheep that died suddenly. Similar to the dead boy found in 2019, the eardrums of these sheep are destroyed. The sudden death of animals is something the town's residents will experience many times over the years. Egon Tiedemann will witness this firsthand later when dead birds rain upon him. Regina, the hotel owner in 2019 and mother to Bartosz, also has family ties that play an important role in 1986. Her mother Claudia has just been promoted as the first female director at the nuclear plant. On her way into the plant for her first day in the new role, she's greeted by Helge, a cleaner at the plant and son of the previous director. In 2019, as an old man, he will interrupt the town's meeting with his shouts that it's going to happen again. But in 1986, a dementia-free Helge gives Claudia a gift in celebration of her promotion. Getting up to speed in her new role, Claudia quickly realizes that the financials of the plant differ significantly from what's been communicated to the public. She visits the previous director, Helge's father, Bernd Doppler, and learns that this is part of a cover-up. Mr. Doppler has propped up the plant for the supposed good of the town. To help Claudia understand the truth, Bernd takes Claudia on a trip through the woods to a gorge. She traverses deep into the cave, where she sees stacks of nuclear waste barrels kept hidden from the public. Soon, this area will be locked behind a metal door, which will be welded shut. In 2019, in his search for Mikkel, Ulrich will find this door. After an eye-opening day at work, Claudia unwraps Helge's gift and sees it is a copy of the book A Journey Through Time by H.G. Tannhaus. This same book can be found in the Stranger's hotel room in 2019. On November 6, 2019, 2 days since Mikkel's disappearance, Jonas heads to Winden Cave to search for the crossing mentioned on his father's map. He has little luck. Giving up, Jonas leaves the cave and finds a red string tied in a knot on his bike. He doesn't know it yet, but this was left here by the stranger. The next day, Erik Obendorf's phone rings. Bartosz, in possession of Erik's drugs and phone from the cave, answers it and speaks to a man named Noah. Later, Bartosz's best friend Jonas pays a visit. Bartosz complains that he can't get a hold of his girlfriend Marta. Jonas reassures him that she'll reach out eventually. Jonas fails to mention that while ignoring Bartosz, Marta has been reaching out to him. Jonas has been ignoring her texts. Before Jonas leaves, Bartosz confides that he managed to get in contact with Erik Obendorf's drug dealer, Noah, the man who called earlier. Jonas agrees to join Bartosz in meeting the supposed dealer later that evening. With his father's memory still haunting him, Jonas pays a visit to Mikkel Kahnwald's grave. As he sits on a bench staring at his father's gravestone, he is paid an unsettling visit by the stranger. The stranger tells Jonas that they don't know each other, but he knew Jonas's father. He goes on to say that life is a labyrinth. Some people wander around their whole lives looking for a way out, but there's only one path and it leads you ever deeper. You don't understand it until you've reached the center. Death is incomprehensible, but you can make peace with it. Till then, you should ask yourself each day if you've made the right decisions. The stranger leaves a confused Jonas behind. That night, rather than join Bartosz in meeting Noah, like Jonas promised, he heads to school and watches Marta perform in a play. In the play, Marta delivers a powerful monologue, saying that nothing changes but always repeats in a cycle. One fate is tied to the next, and knots cannot be undone but can be severed. In her dressing room afterwards, Jonas comes clean to Marta, explaining how he wasn't in an exchange program in France as Bartosz claimed. In fact, he was in therapy, dealing with the post-traumatic stress of his father's suicide. Jonas asks Marta why she called him that morning rather than Bartosz. Then, they kiss, reigniting their passion from the previous summer. The stranger asks the hotel owner Regina if she can deliver a package for him to Jonas Kahnwald. Returning home from Marta's play, Jonas finds it waiting for him. It contains an orb, which Jonas realizes is a futuristic flashlight of sorts. It also contains a Geiger counter. Most importantly, it contains an envelope marked with the words, "Do not open before November 4th, 10:13 p.m. It is the same envelope, containing the same message read days earlier by Jonas's grandmother, Ines. It is his father's goodbye letter. Jonas reads it. Dear Jonas, by the time you read this, everything will have happened, irrevocably. It can no longer be changed. I would have liked to explain things to you sooner, but I hope once you understand how everything is connected, you will understand my decision. The truth is a strange thing. You can try to suppress it, but it will always find its way back to the surface. We make a lie into our truth in order to survive. We try to forget until we can't anymore. We don't know even half of the mysteries of this world. We are wanderers in the dark. This is my truth. On November 4th, 2019, I traveled through time to the year 1986. The boy from the future stayed, and in time he became a man. Mikkel became Mikkel, who never knew where he belonged. By the time you read this, I'll already be gone, both as a boy and as a man. I hope you can forgive me. Everything is connected. The letter is signed Mikkel/Michael. Jonas doesn't know it yet, but he just began a journey that will span decades and determine the fate of our world. A day earlier, while Jonas explores the Winden Caves, Police Chief Charlotte Doppler is busy. Besides the growing pile of missing children cases, she has to deal with her family. There is tension between her and her husband Peter, as they discuss carpool plans. Her daughters fight as Franziska accuses her younger daughter Elisabeth of stealing her lipstick. Franziska believes Elisabeth plays innocent, taking advantage of the fact that she is deaf and only 8 years old. On the way to school, Charlotte grabs the SD card out of a wildlife camera on the side of the road, then drops her daughter Elisabeth off at school, who quickly runs to her new boyfriend, Yasin. At the station, Charlotte learns that the boy dressed in 80s garb had red soil on his shoes, which did not match the area where he was found. The soil must have come from the crime scene. Checking the SD card, Charlotte sees that around the time Mikkel disappeared, Peter's car was the only one seen to drive nearby. Her suspicions of her husband grow further when she finds red soil at Peter's family cabin. Busy with her investigation, Charlotte asks Peter to pick their daughter Elisabeth up from school. However, when he arrives, he finds that she's already left on her own. This begins a frantic and fruitless search for Elisabeth. Hours later, Elisabeth shows up, back at Charlotte and Peter's home. She says she didn't want to wait anymore, so walked home on her own. On the way back, she was delayed because she met someone named Noah, someone who gave her a pocket watch with the inscription, "For Charlotte." In the hospital, Peter's father, Helge, tells a nurse, "I have to stop him." When asked who he needs to stop, Helge says Noah, the man who called Bartosz, claiming to be Erik's drug dealer, and the man who gave Elisabeth the pocket watch. The next day, Elisabeth's boyfriend Yasin is stopped in the woods by a man who claims to have been sent by Noah. Yasin promptly joins the growing list of boys who have disappeared from Winden. However, not all is sadness in the town of Winden, as Ulrich's son Magnus and Charlotte's daughter Franziska move beyond flirtation. A relationship begins to blossom. Love is in the air in 1986 as well. A young Ulrich and his future wife Katarina decide to take things to the next level and consummate the relationship. Unfortunately, Hannah, Ulrich's future mistress, is jealous. She spies on the two of them and falsely reports to the police that Ulrich forced himself on Katarina. As tensions grow for Ulrich in 1986, so do they in 2019. He attempts to distance himself from Hannah while he and his family deal with Mikkel's disappearance. However, this does not stop her from showing up at his house uninvited. Katarina's suspicions of an affair grow further. Reflecting on his life, Ulrich discusses with Charlotte how, after the failures of the investigation into his brother's disappearance decades earlier, he decided to become a cop, one that won't fail like the drunk, incompetent Egon did. He realizes, however, that he has inadvertently followed in Egon's footsteps. In 1986, Hannah, failing to capture Ulrich's attention, meets Mikkel, planting the seeds for their future relationship and marriage. In addition to meeting Hannah, Mikkel also meets the new priest from the parish of St. Christopher, a priest named Noah. He tells Mikkel that God has a plan for everyone, including Mikkel himself. 33 years later, Noah, in the guise of Erik's drug dealer, will also meet Bartosz and recruit him for a mysterious cause. Though 33 years have passed, Noah appears the same age as he did the day he met Mikkel. Looking through case files from the time of his brother's disappearance, Ulrich notices a discrepancy. His mother lied about his father Trant's whereabouts the night Mads disappeared. He confronts his father to no avail, but learns some important information from his mother Jana. She tells Ulrich that at the time in 1986, Trant was having an affair with Claudia, the nuclear plant's previous director. Jana lied to the police in order to cover up the affair. She also tells Ulrich that Claudia's daughter Regina was the last one to see Mads before he vanished. Regina, meanwhile, is having a tough day. Earlier, she received some bad news about her mammogram. So she has little patience when Ulrich arrives to confront her. She also has a tense history with Ulrich. 33 years earlier, Ulrich and Katarina believed Regina was the one who falsely reported him to the police. They tormented her for this. Now, in 2019, Regina reveals the truth, that it was Hannah who reported him. Ulrich further confirms this by checking the case files. He confronts Hannah. Furious, he asks, "How did your husband put up with you for so long?" No wonder he couldn't take it anymore in the end, not realizing he is talking about his own son. Brooding over the mess of his life, Ulrich looks through old photographs. He sees one of his brother Mads and has a strange thought. He heads to the morgue to inspect the body of the boy found days earlier, the body inexplicably dressed in 80s clothing. Mads had a scar on his chin, which matches the scar on the body. Ulrich realizes that somehow he is looking at the unaged body of his younger brother Mads. He disappeared in 1986 and reappeared as a corpse here in 2019. Although Ulrich learned some truths today, others remain out of reach. For example, he doesn't know that his father Trant is currently meeting with Peter in the Doppler family bunker. That night, at 9:17 p.m., Jonas will enter the Winden cave tunnels and cause a power surge. Trant will open a notebook and see that this power surge was expected at this precise time. Someone has given Peter and Trant this strange notebook. Someone who seems to have great knowledge of future events. The morning after Jonas received the package containing his father's suicide note, he makes another discovery. Someone has written, "Follow the signal" on the map of Winden's cave that his father left behind. Later, he'll realize it was the stranger that left him this clue. Back in the Winden cave, Jonas follows the signal using the provided Geiger counter. This leads him to a metal door engraved with a triquetra symbol and the message, "Sic mundus creatus est." This same symbol appears on Trant and Peter's notebook. As Jonas enters the door, lights flicker throughout Winden. Reaching a fork in the tunnel, Jonas turns right. This leads to an exit very similar to the cave entrance, though the scenery is slightly different. Like Mikkel, Jonas has traveled through time to 1986. He finds his way to the hospital and eventually spots Mikkel, chatting with Jonas's future grandmother, Ines. He is intent on bringing Mikkel back to the present and setting things right, but before he can intervene, the stranger appears and explains, "If you take Mikkel back, you're meddling in the sequence of events. Then your father never meets your mother. They don't fall in love or get married, do they? And you're never born. If you take him back now, you're erasing your own existence. The role you play in this is much bigger than you think, but every decision for something is a decision against something else. A life for a life. What will you decide?" After his encounter with the stranger, Jonas abandons his plans and returns to 2019 through the cave. Back home, he finds that his mother Hannah is sad and lonely. Months earlier, she lost her husband, and now her emotional support, Ulrich, is avoiding her. Jonas comforts his mother, saying, "I really think Dad loved you very much." They embrace, then Jonas returns to the attic and burns the letter from his father. Meanwhile, Ulrich begins his own journey through time as he investigates the case files for his missing brother from 33 years ago. In 1986, investigating Mads' disappearance, Egon speaks with Helge. The night Mads vanished, Helge took a different route home than usual, avoiding the forest road. In his notebook, Egon writes, "Why not Forest Road?" something he intends to question further in a follow-up interview, which unfortunately will never occur as Helge dodges Egon's attempts to schedule it. In 2019, Ulrich sees the note, "Why not Forest Road?" in the case files. He begins to suspect Helge is involved with the recent missing children. He shares his suspicions with Charlotte, the police chief, and Helge's daughter-in-law. However, she finds it deeply unlikely that a 75-year-old with dementia could be responsible for the kidnappings. Charlotte leaves Ulrich to continue her own investigation. With a search warrant finally in hand, she heads to the nuclear plant and finds the same gorge that Claudia entered in 1986, the one containing yellow barrels full of nuclear waste. However, the room is now empty. Aleksander, the plant director, used the extra time from the delayed warrant to temporarily move the barrels. In their place, Charlotte only finds some yellow scraps and the other side of the metal door that blocked Ulrich days earlier. Undeterred by Charlotte's objections, Ulrich visits the nursing home and attempts to question an elderly Helge. Helge shouts, "It was him, I know you," as though he recognizes and is frightened of Ulrich. As Helge's vitals spike, Ulrich is pulled out of the room. Helge mutters to himself that he can change the past. Seeing that Ulrich has not let go of the crazy idea that Helge is involved in the kidnapping, Charlotte suspends him from the force and sends him home. Waiting for Ulrich is his wife Katerina. He intends to apologize for being so absent lately, but Katerina is uninterested. Instead, she reveals that she put the pieces together and knows of his affair with Hannah. Ulrich attempts to explain or apologize, but is rebuked. Katerina tells him that his mother called looking for him, then leaves. Ulrich goes to his mother Jana again. She tells him that something strange happened. In 1986, 1 week before Mads disappeared, she saw a man arguing with a priest. The man's ear was scarred or disfigured, just like Helge's. This morning, Jana saw the same man out her window, as though he hadn't aged a day. Charlotte begins to have her own suspicions about Helge. For example, why has he held on to his family's cabin all these years? The same cabin where his accident occurred, causing the scars on his ear and face. Charlotte questions her husband and Helge's son, Peter, about this, but he evades her questions. Inside the bunker by the cabin, Charlotte finds scraps of wallpaper. She doesn't know it, but this is the bunker where Erik Obendorf was held, where he was experimented on, and the man conducting those experiments was a younger Helge, working with the priest, Noah. This younger Helge recently traveled from 1986 to 2019 and was spotted by Ulrich's mother, Jana. Ulrich returns to the nursing home. Helge is missing, but looking through his things, Ulrich finds a small acorn figurine, similar to the one used to lure Yasin days earlier. He also finds a copy of the book A Journey Through Time, the same book Helge gifted to Claudia 33 years earlier. Finally, in the book, Ulrich finds a coin on a red cord, similar to the one worn around Mads' neck when his body was found. Ulrich notices Helge wandering into the night and follows him. As they walk through the woods, he calls Charlotte and leaves a message. "Charlotte, the question isn't who abducted the children, but when. I was right, Helge Doppler. Not now, but in 1986. Call me back immediately when you get this." Ulrich follows Helge to the Winden Cave and to the same time tunnel Jonas discovered earlier. However, where Jonas took a right, Ulrich takes a left and finds himself not in 1986, but 1953. That year, 2 bodies belonging to young boys are discovered at the nuclear plant construction site. As a young Egon Tiedemann investigates, a child Helge watches. Egon's investigation will never reveal the truth that these bodies belong to Erik Obendorf and Yasin Friese, 2 of the children that vanished from Winden in 2019. Similar to Mads, their eardrums are destroyed and their faces are burned so no eyes are visible. Ulrich, getting his bearings after inadvertently time traveling, runs into Agnes Nielsen and her son Trant. They are Ulrich's grandmother and father. He then heads to a clock shop where he finds H.G. Tannhaus, author of A Journey Through Time. Tannhaus is confused when Ulrich shows him the book. He has not yet written it. While there, 2 young girls arrive. One is Ulrich's mother Jana, and the other is Ines, the nurse who will adopt Mikkel in 1986. Ulrich overhears them discussing the bodies found at the construction site. Fearing that one of them belongs to Mikkel, he runs to the police station where he finds Egon. Although the bodies are unidentified, based on their appearance, Egon can confirm neither of them belong to Mikkel. Before taking off, Ulrich asks if Egon knows an old man named Helge Doppler. Confused, Egon points out that Helge is just a young boy, the son of nuclear plant director Bernd Doppler. Ulrich takes off in search of this young Helge. Meanwhile, Helge arrives at Ulrich Nielsen's future home, where Egon Tiedemann and his wife Doris reside. Helge is there for math tutoring from Egon's daughter Claudia. During the math lesson, Agnes and Trant arrive to inquire about rooms for rent. Doris, without thinking, asks Agnes about her husband and learns that he is dead. Some small talk later, Doris asks her daughter Claudia to take Trant on a tour of the neighborhood once she's done tutoring. On their tour, Claudia, her dog Gretchen, and Trant walk together. Helge follows behind. They end up at the Winden Cave, where Claudia tells Trant that kids often dare each other to go as far into the cave as they can. Before Trant accepts the dare, Claudia decides it's time to take Helge home. The two leave while Helge stays behind for a moment and throws a stick into the cave, which Gretchen chases. The dog disappears into the cave's darkness and is lost. Egon returns home to greet his wife Doris and meet the new tenant, Agnes. During their conversation, Doris and Agnes seem unable to stop glancing at one another. In their conversation, Agnes mentions that her grandmother was from Winden and always spoke highly of it. This is interrupted when Claudia returns, distraught over Gretchen's disappearance. Egon takes off to search for the missing pup. Outside the Doppler mansion, Ulrich finds Helge. He begins their conversation by handing him the coin hanging from a red cord. Helge hasn't seen it before. Ulrich then asks about the dead birds Helge has collected in a box. Did he kill them himself? No, they simply fell from the sky. They're so beautiful when they're dead, Helge says. After a manic search for his son, Ulrich finds himself face to face with a child he believes will grow up to become a kidnapper and a killer. If he kills Helge now in 1953, Erik, Yasin, and Mikkel will be saved in 2019. But can Ulrich find it in himself to kill a child? Unfortunately for Helge, yes he can. Sensing danger, Helge runs, but is ultimately captured. Ulrich strikes the child's head with a rock over and over, then drags Helge's unconscious body into the Doppler family bunker. At the Tiedemann's home, Agnes and Doris grow closer. Agnes' son Trant examines cigarette burns on his arm. In the bunker, in an unknown time, an elderly Claudia looks at a wall decorated with pictures of Winden residents and strings between them. Also, plenty of weapons. While Ulrich spoke to a confused H.G. Tannhaus in 1953, one who had not yet written A Journey Through Time, the stranger converses with a more seasoned Tannhaus in 1986. They discuss many of the ideas from the book. Tannhaus shows the stranger a drawing of the triquetra. Tannhaus explains that wormholes connect not 2, but 3 dimensions, as represented by the 3 overlapping shapes in the triquetra: future, past, and present. They also discuss the lunar solar cycle, the idea that every 33 years, the cycle of the moon and sun match. And the number 33, Tannhaus points out, appears in many other places. Jesus performed 33 miracles, 33 litanies of the angels, and more. Jonas adds that 33 is also the age at which the Antichrist begins his reign. Regarding cause and effect, the clockmaker points out, if a wormhole exists, everything is trapped in a mutually dependent time loop. Past affects future, while future also affects past. Eventually, the stranger confesses that this is not simply a theoretical conversation. The stranger has put these concepts into practice. He is from the future. The stranger pulls out a device and tells Tannhaus he needs him to repair it. This device is a time machine, capable of traveling 33 years into the future or past. It is also capable of recreating the explosion that, a few months earlier, created a wormhole by the nuclear plant. Tannhaus, shocked, asks if the man intends on creating another wormhole. No, he intends to use the device to close the one that already exists. Unfortunately, Tannhaus says he cannot repair the machine. The stranger insists, pointing out that Tannhaus built the device himself. In fact, his initials are engraved on it. Tannhaus asks the stranger to leave, and he does, but first says, "This town is like a festering wound, and we're all part of it. But I can change it. Your device can change it. I've seen the future. I know what will happen. I have to set things right again, and you have to help me." After the stranger leaves, Tannhaus pulls a device off his shelf and places it next to the one the man left behind. They are identical, though Tannhaus's is far less worn than the stranger's. In 1953, Tannhaus, in his shop, notices that Ulrich forgot his coat. In the pocket, Tannhaus finds a smartphone from 66 years in the future. In the Tiedemann house, Doris tries on one of Agnes's dresses, providing ample opportunity for physical contact. When Doris asks Agnes about her husband, she says, "He was a pastor, but I can't say he was a man of faith. He wasn't a good person. Sometimes I think it's good he's dead, and that I'm free." Egon drives by the woods and notices Ulrich walking on the side of the road. Stained with blood from his recent murder attempt, Ulrich runs for the cave, hoping to return to his time, but is stopped just before reaching it. Helga is missing, and Egon accuses Ulrich of having something to do with it. Further, he accuses Ulrich of murdering the 2 boys found at the construction site. Since the 2 boys are still dead, Ulrich must have failed in changing the future. Helga will still grow up and murder them. As Egon places him under arrest, Ulrich mutters to himself, "But I changed it. But I changed it." In the Doppler family bunker, a wounded Helga wakes up. In 1986, Katerina is furious that Ulrich is still in lockup after someone told the cops he forced himself on her. Katerina promises Hannah that she'll clobber whoever told this lie. Deflecting suspicion, Hannah casually suggests that maybe Regina was responsible. Once Ulrich is freed, he and Katerina approach and intimidate Regina. Before they can hurt her, a stranger appears with a gun and saves her. The man is wounded and on the run from the law. Regina wants to take him to a hospital, but he refuses. Instead, she will take him home and stitch him up herself. She asks his name and he says, "Aleksander." In 33 years, the 2 will be married, and she will be dying of cancer. Once healed, Aleksander returns to the woods to bury a bag of evidence, his gun, and a passport containing his real name, Boris Niewald. The bag contains another passport belonging to an Alex Kuhler. He keeps this one and adopts the new identity. He is unaware that Hannah is nearby and will retrieve the bag once he leaves. At the nuclear plant, Claudia once again rappels into the cave containing stored nuclear waste. While there, she sees a dog. Claudia is struck by how similar the dog looks to Gretchen, the one she lost 33 years earlier. Although Claudia doesn't know it yet, Gretchen has joined the growing list of time travelers in Winden. Beginning to suspect there is something strange at work in the nuclear plant, Claudia again confronts her predecessor, Bernd Doppler. She demands to know the true nature of an incident that occurred at the plant last summer. Bernd lies and says it was a simple error in the volume control system. It produced only a small amount of waste that is safely hidden. Later, Aleksander, now healed, comes to the plant to ask Regina's mother for work. Claudia makes no promises but says they may need help in the future. Soon enough, that time comes. Claudia offers him work on the condition that it remain confidential. He agrees, and she asks him to weld shut the door to the area containing radioactive waste. This plants the seeds for Aleksander's eventual promotion to plant director. In 2019, Katerina is looking for Ulrich, unaware that he's currently trapped in 1953. Charlotte doesn't know where he is and tells Katerina that she actually suspended him and expected him to go home. Katerina assumes he is with Hannah, but when confronted, Hannah spins lies to protect herself. She claims that Ulrich pressured her into the affair. She claims that Ulrich told Hannah he loves her and not Katerina. This understandably upsets Katerina, but diffuses her anger into sadness. Hannah decides to strike back at Ulrich for leaving her. As a physiotherapist, one of Hannah's clients is Aleksander. After 33 years of holding on to the evidence, Hannah shows Aleksander the bag containing his pistol and original passport. Hannah's offer is simple. "I don't care how you do it, but I'd like you to destroy Ulrich, or I'll expose you." As the director of the nuclear plant and a powerful figure in Winden, Hannah believes Aleksander can do this. Aleksander calls Torben Wöhler, his confidant in the police force, and tells him to dig up dirt on Ulrich. He also tells Torben they'll soon be able to put the radioactive waste barrels back, which Torben helped to hide. The stranger pays a visit to the truck stop where the barrels are currently hidden and fills a vial with liquid from one of them. While Hannah seeks to destroy her lover, Hannah's son Jonas avoids his. Marta calls, but Jonas continually ignores her. He is shaken from his travels to 1986 and disturbed by the discovery that Marta is his aunt. Their relationship is wrong. Returning home in the rain, Jonas finds Marta waiting for him. She demands answers. She demands to know if their kiss at the play meant something. Jonas tells her that what happened between them was wrong. We're not a good match. She kisses Jonas. He apologizes and goes inside. While their relationship seemingly ends, another grows stronger. Magnus and Franziska have only gotten closer as they find comfort with each other while Winden falls apart. Meanwhile, Magnus and Jonas' friend Bartosz plays video games. He's interrupted when the grandmother he thought was dead shows up at his house. An older Claudia tells Bartosz that many of the stories his mother told him are true, but some are not. She leaves him with a photo of her and a young Regina so he can pass it on to his mother. Claudia tells him that she's made a lot of mistakes, and if she could turn back time, she'd do things differently. Claudia isn't the only one who wants to change the past. When Ulrich followed an older Helge into the Winden cave, he ended up in 1953. However, Helge went to 1986. At his family's cabin, he spies on his younger self. The younger Helge has been working with Noah on the prototype time machine in the bunker, the one that burned Erik Obendorf's face and sent his corpse to 1953. Helge is beginning to lose his will to continue work on the machine, and the growing body count of innocent children is taking its toll. When Helge threatens to quit and asks Noah why God would want any of this, Noah assures Helge that there is no God. There is no plan, there is nothing but chaos. People are bad. Life is nothing but a spiral of pain. The world is doomed to be destroyed, but this machine is our ark, and I am Noah. He promises that with this device, they will be able to decide the world's fate, far removed from all the evil and from all pain. Besides Helge in 1986, Bartosz in 2019 has also been recruited to Noah's cause. They meet on a dark road. Bartosz tells Noah that everything he predicted has come true. Noah asks Bartosz if he thought about his offer, and Bartosz responds, yes. It is November 4th, 2019, the night Mikkel vanished. Peter Doppler struggles with temptation to see the prostitute by the truck stop. He goes to the bunker by his family cabin to collect himself. While there, a portal opens and the corpse of a child falls out of it. Peter attempts CPR, but the child is dead. He quickly learns that he has found Ulrich's younger brother Mads. The body has traveled from 1986 to his cabin in 2019. He calls the boy's father, Trant, to the cabin when an older time-traveling Claudia appears. She instructs them to move the body into the woods, where it will be discovered, after which she will have more to tell them. At school, Jonas is confronted by Bartosz. Bartosz is furious that Jonas ditched him the night they were meant to meet Erik's drug dealer, and he feels betrayed that the very night Jonas skipped out on him, Jonas also kissed his girlfriend Marta. Eventually, Marta breaks up the fight and Jonas takes off. Jonas goes to see his grandmother Ines and learns that she knew his father was truly Mikkel. He furiously asks why she didn't do anything to stop what would happen if she knew Mikkel would go back in time and become Mikkel, Jonas's father. Ines tells Jonas that she believes everything happens for a reason. What's past is past. Who knows what the future will bring? Jonas says he wants things to go back to normal. Ines smiles and leaves him with a pristine copy of his father's suicide note, the one he burned the other night. Still stranded in 1953, Ulrich has his mugshot taken. He is arrested under suspicion of murdering the two boys found at the construction site. While being dragged to a cell, Ulrich disturbs Egon by giving him a glimpse into the future. He asks, "Have you already started drinking, or will you start after your wife leaves you?" Besides Ulrich, there is another time traveler in 1953. The older Claudia visits HG Tannhaus and provides him with blueprints for a device. When he asks what the device is, Claudia explains it's something that will set the course of time straight. He is unaware that he will be building a time machine. 33 years later, in 1986, the stranger returns to pick up his repaired time machine. Tannhaus explains that, actually, he did not repair the machine. Instead, by looking at the stranger's old, worn-out machine, he was able to figure out how to complete the one he'd been working on, the one he'd started building when Claudia gave him the blueprints in 1953. It is a paradox. Tannhaus was only able to complete the time machine by looking at it in its completed form once the stranger brought it from the future. The future influences the past. In fact, Tannhaus does not even fully understand how the machine works. It is activated by holding Ulrich's cell phone near it. Tannhaus doesn't know what a cell phone is, but surmised that it releases some form of communication that happens to affect the machine. The machine also has an opening, which is a mystery to Tannhaus. However, the stranger shows this is where the cesium is placed, radioactive liquid he stole from the yellow barrels. Now understanding, Tannhaus explains that the device generates a Higgs field. It increases the mass of the cesium, and an electromagnetic pulse causes it to implode into a black hole, similar to the incident that occurred at the nuclear plant, creating the wormhole. The stranger leaves with the new device. It will grow old over the years, until it's brought back into the clockmaker's shop, where it will be exchanged for the new one in an endless time loop. In 2019, Charlotte listens to the last message Ulrich left her before he disappeared. The message which stated, "The question isn't who abducted the children, but when. I was right, Helge Doppler. Not now, but in 1986. With Ulrich currently stranded in 1953, Charlotte is unable to call him back, and instead investigates on her own. She visits her father-in-law Helge's nursing home to find that he is missing. The nurse explains that this is the longest he's been gone. The nurse and Charlotte are unaware that Helge is currently visiting 1986 with the help of the tunnels in Winden Cave. When asked if Ulrich has been back, the nurse says he hasn't, and strangely, Ulrich thought Helge had something to do with the missing children. Charlotte calls Peter to ask precisely when his father Helge was kidnapped as a child. He desperately wants to tell Charlotte something, but she doesn't allow him to say anything besides direct answers to her questions. He tells her Helge was kidnapped in 1953. Charlotte comments that this is exactly 66 years ago, an increment of 33. It's all connected, Charlotte says. She is familiar with the concept of 33-year cycles, as the clockmaker H.G. Tannhaus is her grandfather. When Peter tells her they need to talk, she insists they can do so later and hangs up. With the year provided by Peter, Charlotte looks through old newspapers and finds an article about Helge's kidnapping. The article includes a mugshot of the suspect, and Charlotte immediately recognizes him as Ulrich. In 1986, Helge finds his older self visiting from 2019. The older Helge tells his younger self that Noah is lying to him and using him. Noah is evil. He begs the younger Helge not to make the same mistakes as him, but is unable to convince him. Rattled by the encounter, younger Helge seeks Noah's guidance. Noah tells Helge a story. When Noah was a little boy, a stranger stayed with his family. The stranger looked like he'd been in a war and had great sadness in his eyes. He sometimes spoke in his sleep, rarely making sense, except for one night when he said, "Nothing is in vain, not a single breath, not a single step, not a single word, not pain." Years later, Noah understood this to mean that pain makes us stronger and makes us who we are. He tells Helge that his pain made him who he is, but no longer has power over him. This works to reignite Helge's passion for the cause. He asks Noah who is next. After checking his log, Noah says, Jonas Kahnwald. Jonas, after talking to his grandmother, decides he will return to 1986. This time, rather than leave things be, he will rescue Mikkel and change the timeline. Before leaving, Jonas hugs his mother and tells her everything will be okay. He has seemingly accepted that his actions will erase himself from existence. In 1986 Winden, Jonas runs into a young Charlotte Doppler. She is sketching pictures of dead birds killed by the electromagnetic effects of the time tunnel. After confirming with Charlotte that the date is November 12, 1986, she asks Jonas what he's doing there. He bluntly says that he is bringing someone back to life. He then heads back to the hospital and quickly locates Mikkel. He sees his father asleep, being read to by Noah. Jonas asks who he is, but Noah simply replies by shushing him. Before Jonas can say anything else, Helge grabs him and knocks him unconscious. When Jonas wakes up, he is in a room with a bunk bed, childish wallpaper, and the prototype of a time machine. He is in the last room Erik Obendorf ever saw. A slot opens and the stranger is there. He tells Jonas not to be afraid. "Why did you lock me in here?" Jonas asks. The stranger explains that it wasn't him, it was Noah. The stranger tells Jonas that he is a guinea pig for the time machine. The passage in the cave is directly under the bunker. If opened, the energy flows through the room, but it is not powerful enough. The machine increases it. According to the stranger, it doesn't quite work yet. Jonas pleads with the stranger to let him out. When he refuses, Jonah asks who he is, and finally, the truth is revealed. The stranger, the time traveler standing before Jonas, is Jonas Kahnwald. The older Jonas tells his younger self that although we think we are free, we are not. We are destined to follow the same path over and over. The younger Jonas tells him that's crazy. He can decide to let him go right now. No, he cannot. The older Jonas explains if he did, it would change his past and change who he is right now, preventing him from destroying the wormhole and setting things back to normal. He asks younger Jonas why he kissed Marta and says, "We are not free in what we do because we're not free in what we want." Young Jonas begs him to stop. The older Jonas apologizes and leaves. It is cruel, but he believes it is necessary to fix things. Elsewhere in 1986, the older Helge has adjusted his plan after failing to convince younger Helge to leave Noah's cause. The older Helge crashes into a car driven by his younger self. 75-year-old Helge dies and fails again. Younger Helge lives to carry out Noah's lethal experiments. In 2019, Noah tells Bartosz that everything is about to begin. He explains that the older Jonas will shortly attempt to close the hole under Winden. However, Jonas has been lied to by an older Claudia. His actions will close the hole, but they will also cause it to be opened in the first place, a paradox. Noah explains that two groups are currently fighting to control time travel, light and shadow. He and Bartosz belong to light, even if what they do is often of a dark nature. As long as they are in this time loop, every move must be repeated exactly. He tells Bartosz that his grandmother Claudia is of the shadow and is not to be trusted. Finally, he hands Bartosz a familiar notebook, chronicling future events, and tells him that, in time, they will free humanity from its pain. Older Jonas crawls into the tunnel under Winden Cave. He activates the machine and sees a familiar apparition, his father covered in blood. The electromagnetic effects of the machine can be witnessed in 1953, 1986, and 2019. In 1953, a bloodied Helge is trapped in a bunker. In 1986, Jonas is trapped in the same bunker. A wormhole appears between them. As they reach out to it, each of them are transported to different times. Helge finds himself in 1986. Jonas arrives in 2052, where the bunker now contains photographs of important Winden residents and strings showing their connections to one another. There are also weapons. Older Claudia has been in this cabin. Jonas steps outside into a world ravaged by the apocalypse. He is found by a group armed with weapons. One of them welcomes him to the future before knocking him unconscious. By the way, before we continue, just a quick reminder if you're enjoying this video to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified the next time we do a video.